Are you already registered at Wikisana?
Dear viewers, a very warm welcome to our today's visit. And I would like to continue to explain the immune system. We are dedicated to a problem that is more relevant than ever. And the whole series is structured in such a way that you slowly learn to understand what this angel's command is doing for us 24 hours a day, but what prerequisites are needed for it. Who weakens it, who lets it overreact, who is responsible for it, so that it can no longer distinguish between friend or foe. As with autoimmune diseases, we are still in the process of determining what weakens and undermines the previous programs, and I would like to use today's program to explain to you what the stress is doing to me in the context of an immunity that is oriented to maximum vigilance for 24 hours. To protect me from viruses, me from bacteria, me from parasites, fungi and, above all, from tumor cells. And I'll get right to the fact that you all know, I think, that a so-called stress does not necessarily have to be negatively affected. I would really call my personal life anything but a life on the pony farm. Life has always challenged me. And when we humans dedicate ourselves to a task that we absolutely want to accomplish, by preparing for a situation that requires overtime, by doing a long journey and many more kilometers, by engaging in something good in the context of a positive stress, it is valuable. Because this constantly giving signals to the body, has been grinding for thousands of years. Man has gone through the most difficult times of emergency in the context of evolution. That is, he has also learned about survival strategies that he can call upon today. That is, at the moment when you put your body under a stressful situation, for example by taking a cold shower, for example by a very intense sport, acute, now, today, for example when you go into the -110-degree cabin. For example when you do an IHHT, that is, a training in which the body is applied with an optimal, with a too low and too high dose of oxygen, then very positive things arise. Namely, the defense is required. The defense in the sense of my white blood cells, my leukocytes, my neutrophils, are really stimulated and activated. Also the natural killer cells and macrophages, natural killer cells, I think you have already understood that we need them, namely in a high activity, that they recognize the tumor cells, that they recognize the viruses. For this they are responsible and above all specialized. And again to give them such a signal. We need you, I need you, come, don't get tired, always be present. They do this through positive stress. Positive is everything they do with joy. Then they can do one too much, but the body will keep the measure of what is available to it. And within the framework of the blood, everything is distributed into the tissue, and these immune globulins, or these red and white blood cells, these macrophages that I told you about, that these are the big garbage men, who clean up everything that can be cleaned up at all in our organism. When cells fall apart, when they die, that has to be stimulated again and again. And the redistribution of blood into the tissue is a situation that is also very important, because all these immune cells react to all border areas, to the skin, to the mucous membranes of the stomach, the intestine, and, above all, to the lungs. That means that not everyone can just enter like that. This gate is really closed by our microorganisms and by these defense cells. Finally, a good stress is also an interval fasting. And interval fasting means that I reduce the amount of food a little. We'll get to that when we maybe discuss in a program what does overweight do with my immune system. And when you talk about an acute situation, which really triggers stress, and I'll give you an example. I'm standing on the train station and the train is coming in, and at the moment it's not my train. I'm waiting, I'm still standing, and the train is leaving again. And on the opposite track, the next train has already arrived. And at that moment I see a woman going down from our platform across 3 or 2 tracks to get to the other platform. Because she wanted to make the train that goes in on the other side, and she just arrived at the top. Then the train comes by. And that's what an acute stress is, and what evolution has actually tested with us for thousands of years. And in the context of this stress situation, it already begins in fractions of a second that through our vegetative nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight and flight reflex, and noradrenaline and adrenaline are released. We don't have to want that. We don't have to demand that. That happens. At that moment, the nerve endings of these outbursts occur, and the information is now transferred to the blood by these hormones. Heart rate high. Endless running. Get all the strength in your muscles now. All the sugar reserves are now in the muscles. The heart rate is rising. The bleeding of the brain is incredibly strong, because now I have to be present. It's a danger. And the blood pressure is rising. The musculature is tightening. This is survival strategy for this moment. And this woman will certainly have set 1000% on speed at that moment that she can make this move. I don't want to say anything more about how irresponsible that is and so on, but that's the way it is. And if the situation continues, the other big neuroendocrine stress cascade sets in. There is a signal via the hypothalamus. This is a stimulating signal for the hypophysis. And that, in turn, gives the signal to the adrenals. And now cortisone is released, i.e., an excessive need for cortisol, which, of course, is also a multifaceted task for our body at this moment. We'll get to that later. How valuable that is. As soon as this situation is over, the acute stress situation, the opposite signal sets in, namely the opponent of relaxation, the relaxation information of the parasympathetic nervous system. And now comes the phase of rest. The phase of rest. She is safe. The next one arrives. She gets in. Nobody sees her anymore. Everything is gone. She is satisfied now. She made it. And now the frequency actually goes down again. The cortisol is reduced. Adrenaline, noradrenaline is reduced. It's okay. The digestion is slowly stimulated again. Blood pressure, heart rate, everything is fine. It doesn't have to be trimmed mentally again to, let's say, alertness and mindfulness. Now the brain can calm down again. I just want to say that these things are just as present for a child who is being born today. And what this evolutionary program entails. Each of us can call this up, but at the moment, this is also what we are prepared for in an acute situation. But we do more than that. Our body cannot assess at all whether it is a life-threatening danger, whether it is a timely danger that it recognizes. It has to get ready now to be ready for a reaction somewhere. No matter which one follows. That means all these stress situations that we live through, which are persistent. Patients with a colitis ulcerosa, which was wonderfully brought back to rest. Which is very nice, also from the symptomatology, without cortisone, without the things, because it has a good balance, now comes into a huge stress situation and the colitis breaks out again. Why is that? Why does a patient who has multiple sclerosis and has a wonderful balance in life gets into a stress situation? Why does he get his boost now? Why didn't he have it for years? Why does he get it now? Why is my health deteriorating all of a sudden? What happened here? Why did I survive the whole phase of my sick mother's accompaniment, who demanded everything from me? But now she has fallen asleep. Why am I so exhausted now? Why am I getting sick now? Why are eczemas breaking out now? Why is the asthma just back again? I just had peace for many weeks. This is called so-called distress. It's a completely different matter. Evolution has not actually pre-programmed this for us humans. Harmony is a very, very valuable story that you should treat yourself to every day. I know it's not easy, but I know that we are not always dependent on others. We hold a lot in our hands, whether we let ourselves be wrapped up in this stress. Or whether, on the other hand, we simply do enough to adapt to the stress. So that we don't get sick and so that we don't get exhausted. Because a stress that prepares all the mechanisms in me to run. And a colleague or boss who bullies me, I stay at my desk. It all happens inside me. I can't get away. That means I can't get rid of this stress. It has to have an effect. Is it really an overload of work? Do I really want to use force to break down my work-life balance? Or is it just that I do a job that I don't enjoy at all? Or is it that I'm not even thinking about it because I'm in a conflict, that I have to raise 2 children alone or that I watch my boyfriend drink? It just wears me out. I'm not ready for this work yet. I think these are all questions that everyone can answer for themselves. I just want to mention the possibilities that we all need every day to get out of this stress. And above all, what we can do to protect ourselves in certain stress phases. Life may not be the same every day, but we can protect ourselves in certain stress phases from a so-called metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome simply refers to blood pressure, insulin resistance, fat metabolism malfunctions. These are all homemade things. If something like this happens, because I'm unhappy, because I find my replacement drug in sugar, because I can't move enough because of the great tension, and so on and so on. All of this, which of course also includes, and I explained this at the beginning, cortisol, this stress hormone, which is really good for me in a certain phase, because it drops the inflammation, because it's just the counterpart of insulin. If this cortisol doesn't regulate itself down again, because the stress attacks, then the result is exhaustion on the one hand, because, of course, I feel tired, because I feel weak. Because the one who was always responsible for feeling inflammation in my body and immediately activating the immunity, clearing up here, regulating these inflammatory processes, exhausts himself. Then, of course, this leads to a series of diseases that not only exhaust me physically, but also make me mentally latently depressed. There are a lot of people who have a so-called simple exhaustion depression. But what does depression mean? Depression is the one where the immune system has to deal with all the stupid things, but can no longer do the homework for me. And this creates an imbalance in my body to regulate this inflammation. Also within this series, we have dedicated a broadcast to these chronic, silent inflammation. And that's why you have to think about it. What can I actually do to get these things out of my own life? To regulate them? And a very simple exercise, which can also be very short-lived, is if I take 10 minutes for myself. The body can thus incredibly certain stimulating inflammatory cytokines, the neurotransmitters which we have discussed. It can regulate them down. That means, if it gets the signal to regulate it down, it can grow on you all the time. It takes care of balance all by itself, but it has to feel that it should do it. And you can do that very well with a mindfulness meditation. If you have a lunch break, if you feel like going to a place where you know you're not disturbed, and you just concentrate for 10 minutes and don't let the day go through your mind again, but let it go through. And maybe just concentrate near this tree, on what you hear, on what you see, on what you perceive. Things that keep you calm all the time. If you know different breathing techniques, and I would recommend everyone to do a seminar at the weekend to learn breathing exercises. Not to live in this hatred of life anymore, but to breathe more slowly, more intensely. You have to learn that. You have to practice that. Then you can do an incredible amount within the framework of an immune balance. And above all, the collateral damage. These 8 mindfulness meditations are something that, the more I deal with these things, the more I appreciate them. The fact that once, twice, several times a day is meaningful. The other thing is a digital detoxification. What is a digital detoxification? A digital detoxification is that you simply say, I don't need this anymore. I watch the news every evening. Everything revolves around it anyway. I'm deeply disappointed in the moment of world politics. Or whatever, and just let it be. Just sit down in the evening and read a nice book or watch a nice, interesting show. On QS24 TV, where I might be able to understand things even better. Use your time. We humans always say we don't have time. I don't think that's true. Do we use it? Or the priorities for time, I set them myself. And if I use them for myself, then I know what to do with my time, where I have time, and is there any time at all? Now is important, today is important, in the moment is important, because yesterday is over, tomorrow, who knows, but now it's important. And the day was hard, and the day was stressful. I think I should do something good to my body now. And also to myself. Maybe it's concerts again, which were closed long enough, where you say, I'm starting again, I'm going to these bark days, I'm joining the bark society, I'm there every month, whatever you like. And that's what it's about. They also control their thoughts. And what's terrible, what I sometimes observe, is that people no longer clarify. They don't clarify, and by that I mean that they carry thoughts around that put them under enormous stress again and again. I don't like that, I don't want that. It happens every day, and sometimes it's really, believe me, not nice things. But it will be clarified very quickly. Don't dwell on it, please clarify at all cost. And we are adults, we are allowed to say something that may hurt us a little at the moment, but meeting people is a challenge. These are things that we can grow on. I have to pick up people where they are. I have to pick up people where they are, they may bump into each other, I have to see that. But that can't trigger anything in me that hurts me too much or too deeply. Come on, that's your point of view, I have mine, thank you, all right. Then maybe it will be checked out somewhere inside, but then we'll pack it away because it shouldn't affect my life. And everything else will be forgiven. And everything else will be forgiven. Oh, come on, I'll shake your hand again. We have hurt each other so much with words. Come on, let's forget about it. Sometimes it's not that easy. And then you meet people, they're gifts. Sure, they're big gifts, you grow on them, but you also grow on the others, believe me. And everyone, a relationship always belongs to 2 people. They are also important for their own lives, for their own happiness. And everything else is stressful, and stress makes you sick. Now I could finish the show, but I'm not done yet. That's why I would like to remind you again to always pay attention to what feeling you have with me. If it's a negative feeling, resolve it. Get out of it. Thank God you always have a night when your body comes back to life. And you can start again. Like people who sometimes change jobs. And you imagine yourself and say, I'm the best secretary in the world. I have to have that. And maybe you have your weaknesses, and the other one let you go because of that. No, I want it now on this new place. And above all, because they don't know me, I want to show who I really am. Laugh is important. Oh, pull the immune system up to Mount Everest. And actually I wanted to read you a text now, but I can do it another time. Yui Schaefer wrote it about laughing. Oh, it's just so beautiful. It comes when I'm happy and when I laugh. And when I look at people who are happy, something happens in me. And my signals at that moment are that movement is important, qigong is important, the short-term increased cortisol is reduced. I get into momentum through yoga, through movement, through stretching and so on. There is so much. There is just so incredibly much you can do. But if you are in these stress phases, then you can also in advance, to maybe also in that moment to protect yourself, for example, use so-called adaptogens. And an adaptogen with which I have a lot of experience. That is, for example, ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is an Indian plant. It comes from the Indian healing art, from the Ayurvedic healing art. And ashwagandha is incredibly balancing and supports the immune system when it is dropped. To get back to its balance very quickly. It improves thyroid problems. The thyroid is always there when it comes to stress. It creates a balance when I exhaust myself hormonally. It quickly creates supply to rebuild the reserves. And sometimes such tension depths from which you come out. It strengthens me when I want to come back slowly in endurance performance or also want to build up my performance readiness and resistance ability. It stabilizes blood sugar. It stabilizes the cholesterol level and it promotes, and I have already said that, the immune system. There are also some other so-called adaptogens. This is ginseng. This is also the roseroot. These are incredibly interesting plants, which really earthen me again and again in a phase of stress. And, of course, hope that this state will eventually come to an end. And that the tiger root can harmonize again and again. Finally, I would like to introduce you to a colleague in the context of this and also in the context of the strengthening of the immune system. A colleague whose waiting room is actually always full, but who at this point really, due to its great importance, should not be underestimated in any way in science and medicine, how well he treats people. And I found this text, which was already written in 1986, by Helmut Dagenbach. When I suffer from headaches or neuroses, feel misunderstood or old. And the Holden Muses do not love me, then I contact Dr. Forrest. He is my eye doctor and my psychiatrist, my orthopedist and my internist. He helps me with every hangover, whether it's from a sorrow or cognac. He doesn't think much of powder and pills, but all the more from air and sunshine. And he welcomes me, oh, pleasant silence he turns to me. Now take a deep breath. Even if his practice very overrun, in his care you walk yourself healthy. Circulatory system patients who are still puffing will have no clinical findings tomorrow. He always brings us back on our feet. The mental into balance, prevents fat and gallstones, only he does not do house visits. In this sense, I wish you a wonderful week. I look forward to the next show with you and to learn to understand each other. What little miracles happen to us every day. Whenever you have questions or health concerns, where you say it would be nice to be able to have a medical advice from a holistic point of view, then the email address visite at QS24TV is available. You enrich this format, and I am very happy to be able to exchange ideas with you. And also behind the scenes, I receive wonderful feedback. And of course, I would like to thank you again and again for that. In this sense, all the best, take good care of yourself, and send my warmest regards to my colleague. Goodbye.